During World War II, the Japanese armored forces faced significant challenges as light tanks like the Type 97 Chiha proved insufficient against the American M4 Sherman medium tanks. In response, the Type 3 Chi-Nu was developed as a last effort to field a more powerful medium tank capable of countering the enemy. Although introduced late and produced in limited numbers, the Chi-Nu reflected a shift in Japan's armored strategy during the final phase of the war. Traditionally, Japanese tank doctrine favored light tanks, emphasizing mobility and infantry support across difficult terrain. However, the superiority of Allied tanks forced Japan to adapt, developing the Chi-Nu as a reactive solution to bridge the gap in firepower and armor. The Chi-Nu reflected battlefield urgency rather than a long-term doctrinal change in Japanese armored forces. The widespread deployment of the M4 Sherman quickly exposed the weaknesses of Japanese medium tanks like the Type 97 Chiha Kai and the improved Type 1 Chi-He. The Chiha Kai's 47mm gun was unable to penetrate the thick armor of the Sherman, forcing the Imperial Japanese Army General Staff to seek a more effective alternative to counter the growing Allied threat. The Type 3 Chi-Nu was not an entirely new design, but was based on the chassis and suspension system of the Type 1 Chi-He, itself an upgraded version of the Type 97 Chiha. Reusing existing components accelerated development, reflecting Japan's pragmatic approach amid urgent circumstances as they needed a more powerful tank in the shortest possible time. The development of the Chi-Nu progressed rapidly, starting in May and completing by October 1943. This speed was driven by the urgent need to fill the gap left by the more advanced Type 4 Ki, to which could not yet be mass-produced. Japan gathered intelligence on tanks like the Sherman and T-34 from military attachés in Berlin, and studied captured Allied tanks in Germany to ensure the Chi-Nu's design could effectively counter its opponents. The primary design goal was to equip the tank with the Type 3 75mm gun capable of penetrating the thick armor of the Sherman. This design was approved for service in 1943, however, production faced significant delays due to material shortages and Allied bombing raids that destroyed Japan's industrial facility. The choice to base the tank on an older chassis reflected a compromise between urgent battlefield needs and industrial limitations, while the more advanced Type 4 T2 was developed concurrently. This illustrates Japan's dilemma in a total war scenario, balancing immediate combat demands with constraints in resources and technology. The Type 3 Chi-Nu was a medium tank developed by Japan during the late stages of World War II, designed with a 5-man crew, commander, gunner, loader, driver, and radio operator, who also served as the hull machine gunner. The tank weighed between approximately 18.2 to 19 tons, with dimensions of 5.64 meters in length, 2.41 meters in width, and 2.68 meters in height. It combined the chassis of the Type 1 Chi-He with a large hexagonal turret featuring an extended commander's cupola. In terms of firepower, the Chi-Nu was armed with the Type 3 75mm gun, a development of the Type 90 75mm field gun, itself based on the French Schneider design. The gun had a barrel length of about 38 calibers with a muzzle velocity of approximately 680 meters per second. Its armor penetration reached 90 millimeters at 100 meters and 65 millimeters at 1,000 meters, sufficient to engage contemporaneous tanks such as the American M4 Sherman. The gun's elevation ranged from -10 to +25 degrees, equipped with a manually operated horizontal sliding breech block and a 6-ported muzzle brake. Secondary armament included a coaxial Type 97 7.7mm machine gun, used for close support and anti-aircraft defense. Regarding protection, the Chi-Nu featured frontal hull armor of 50 millimeters, side armor at 25 millimeters, and rear armor at 20 millimeters. The turret armor was generally about 25 millimeters thick. though some modern sources, including video game data, cite up to 50 millimeters on the turret front. Compared to its primary adversary, the M4 Sherman, which had frontal hull armor ranging from 58 to 63.5 millimeters, and turret armor about 76 millimeters thick, the Chinook was notably weaker in terms of ballistic protection. This was mainly due to chassis weight limits and steel shortages late in the war, leading the design to prioritize firepower over comprehensive armor protection. The Chinook was powered by an air-cooled Mitsubishi Type 1.5 D12 diesel engine, delivering a maximum output of approximately 240 horsepower at 2,000 revolutions per minute. Its leaf spring suspension, inherited from the Type 1 Chihi series, allowed a top speed of around 39 kilometers per hour and an operational range of nearly 210 kilometers on typical terrain. The power-to-weight ratio was about 12.63 horsepower per ton, sufficient to ensure mobility suitable for its intended combat role in the East Asian theater. Compared to contemporaries like the American M4A3 Sherman and the Soviet T-34-76 model 1943, the Chinook was significantly lighter, with comparable main armament but inferior armor protection and speed. Nevertheless, it represented an important step forward for Japan in developing tanks capable of facing Allied vehicles, while also reflecting the technological and resource challenges faced by the nation in the final years of World War II. The Type 3 Chinook, the Imperial Japanese Army's last medium tank, began production in September 1944 with a total output estimated between 144 and 166 units. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries was the main manufacturer, while the Sagami and Itachi plants contributed smaller quantities. Production faced significant challenges due to low priority, material shortages, especially steel, and strategic bombing by the United States, although the main factories were not directly damaged. Despite being designed to counter the M4 Sherman, limited production numbers reflected Japan's declining industrial capacity in the war's final stages. The upgraded Chinook Kai or Chinook 2 variant planned to feature a more powerful Type 575mm gun, a larger turret and thicker armor, but these models were never mass-produced due to the war's end. The planned improvements demonstrated efforts to enhance firepower despite significant constraints. All Chinook tanks were reserved for homeland defense on Japan's main islands, assigned to regiments within the 1st and 4th Armored Divisions, part of the Mobile Shock Force intended to repel Allied landings. However, Japan's surrender prior to any invasion meant the Chinook never saw combat. While its 75mm gun was capable of penetrating Sherman armor, shortages of fuel and resources combined with overwhelming Allied superiority limited its strategic impact, though it could pose temporary difficulties in localized battles. The Type 3 Chinook represents the final and most powerful medium tank produced by Japan during the Second World War, marking a significant advancement from the Type 97 Chiha. With notable improvements in firepower and design, despite numerous production challenges, such as material shortages, low priority, and repeated bombing raids, the Chinook clearly demonstrated Japan's effort to overcome previous design limitations and counter superior Allied tanks like the M4 Sherman. To date, only one confirmed Type 3 Chinook remains, exhibited at the Japan Ground Self-Defense Forces Armored Officer School in Tsuchiura, Ibaraki Prefecture. This rare specimen stands as a valuable, tangible symbol of Japan's final stage of armor development during the war and reflects its unrealized strategic defensive role. The fact that only one tank survives underscores both its rarity and historical significance. Technically, the Chinook was equipped with a significantly improved Type 375mm gun capable of threatening enemy tanks, but its relatively thin armor left it vulnerable in direct confrontations. Developed amid the rapid decline of Japan's industrial capacity, production numbers were insufficient to make a battlefield impact. Therefore, despite its technical capabilities, the Chinu never saw actual combat as the war ended before it could be deployed. The story of the Type 3 Chinu clearly illustrates the contradiction between technological potential and strategic realities. It was a rational technical solution in a conflict where industrial strength, access to resources, and control of the battlefield were ultimately decisive. The Chinu is more than just a tank. It symbolizes Japan's final effort in a war where surrender rendered all technical advances obsolete